Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the 104th episode of Stories of Service, Ordinary People Who Do Extraordinary Work. And I am the host of Stories of Service, Teresa Carpenter. And today I have another amazing guest. I always have amazing guests, but my guests who work in any type of an animal-related industry are always some of my most favorite guests. So I have with me Danique Masingill. Danique, how are you doing today?
Exceptionally well. How about you?
I'm doing really well. I'm so happy to have her, and I have actually, as I do with many of my guests, I have a personal connection to her. As when we were moving our dog, our boxer dog, snub nosed, in the summertime, Jayda, to the UK with all their many rules. Danique is an expert on Transportation Service Administration, the different laws about psychiatric service dogs, emotional support animals, and was just such a wealth of knowledge for me personally. So. She knows this industry so well, and I couldn't think of anybody better to talk about how service dogs integrate within law enforcement, the military, and even as therapy dogs. Danique, I'm going to read you guys a little bit about her, and then we're just going to get into the questions. If you're following me on YouTube, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're following me from any of the other socials, please feel free to follow me. Hit the notification bell or whatever it is in your respective social media channels. But Danique Masingill is a distinguished figure in the service dog industry, recognized for her profound impact on policy, advocacy, scientific research, and community service. With a background steeped in military law enforcement and an enduring commitment to veterans and first responders, she has spearheaded multiple nonprofits and initiatives, and most notably, the Hero Academy. Her illustrious journey was ignited during her tenure in the U.S. Navy, where she served with military police dogs. The experience was a catalyst for her pursuit of knowledge, leading her to the University of Syracuse, where she completed advancement studies in working dogs. The commitment culminated in the attainment of a master's degree in the subject. Her exceptional expertise has positioned her as a sought-after authority in the field. Entities ranging from Congress to the Department of Transportation, the Government Accountability Office, and even the airline industry have solicited her unparalleled insights to shape pivotal policies concerning service dogs and military canines. Previously, she was with the Leashes of Valor, where she led the charge in advancing both scientific and legal dimensions of service dog utilization. Under her guidance, they collaborated with the Thomas Jefferson University's College of Nursing in a groundbreaking research endeavor, which examined the effectiveness of service dogs as treatments for post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury, which was also a step towards formalizing service dogs using evidence-based therapies. Her advocacy extends to safeguarding the legal status of service dogs under the American with Disabilities Act, and she played a pivotal role in influencing the Department of Transportation's regulations, which recognize the right to travel with service dogs prescribed for PTSD while distinguishing them from emotional support animals. And now, as I said, she is with the Hero Academy, which is an innovative program providing service, faculty, and working dogs to veterans, first responders, and their families, as well as the broader community at no cost. The transformative initiative epitomizes her unwavering commitment to fostering positive change and empowerment, and her remarkable journey underscores her leadership in reshaping the landscape of service dogs, policy advocacy, and community impact. And her tireless commitment to the Hero Academy continues to elevate lives and solidify the critical role of service dogs in enhancing the well-being of individuals and communities alike. Wow. Thank you so much again for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
So am I. So I first want to start off with where are you originally from, and what inspired you to raise your right hand and join the Navy?
So I'm actually part German. So I was raised in Germany almost until I was 18 years old, and came to the States to, start basic college. My parents wanted me to do a year abroad. And then my parents' career changed professionally. So we ended up staying in the States. And 2 years after that, 9/11 happened. So my brief college stint in the US turned into permanent residence. And then after 9/11, I felt compelled to serve specifically in law enforcement. Like that was my wish. And primarily canine, actually. So the passion came early on. And I gave up my German citizenship in order to join the American military. And I stayed within the United States Navy until 2007.
That is fascinating. I did not know you were from Germany. So you speak fluent German and everything?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. So Why did your parents come to the United States? You may have said that. I don't know if I caught it.
So my dad's American, my mom's German. So I was basically a dual citizen child, and
Mhm.
my dad worked for an American company in Germany at the time. So I ended up just being raised there most of my life.
Wow. What was that adjustment like as an adult to come from the United States, I mean, from Germany to the United States?
Definitely a very strong culture shock.
Yeah.
European kids grow up very differently, and I was a '90s child in Germany, so we had Kosovo and a lot of other things going on. So my impressions of the world, I think, were very different than a lot of American kids in the '90s from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, German culture is very unique. I think even of all the European nations that I interact with at NATO, they're some of the most organized and blunt people, and
Yeah.
and love rules, love
Oh
their
yeah.
rules and their policies, and just if there's a way to put a rule on it and do it to a certain degree, they will find a way to do it that way. But I really enjoy work. I work with quite a few Germans at my work, and definitely a wonderful experience, and the culture there is amazing, and my husband loves it because everything there makes sense to him. It's very logical and orderly.
They do live up. Germans live up to several stereotypes. I will say that.
So you get to the United States, you join the Navy, you go into law enforcement. I believe you were a master of arms, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And tell me a little bit about your enlisted career. What was that like for you?
So I was enlisted from 2002 to 2007, so right at the beginning of the invasion, and being in law enforcement at the time, when we still went to Master at Arms school, it was much more law enforcement based. And as I was a Master at Arms for those years, you could definitely see it transition much more into force protection, anti-terrorism. So we were still more on the police side. Later, that turned much more into actual military and force protection, not community policing. So my first 3 years were at Weapons Station Charleston that was before we had Guantanamo Bay. So it was definitely a high profile job. I struggled with a lot of blue on blue issues, is probably to put it politely. So my mental health started deteriorating, and a lot of physical health issues started happening at my first command already. Then I got NCIS Orders Protective Services School. Then Hurricane Katrina hit and my orders got changed. So I ended up on the John F. Kennedy, and that's where my career started coming to an end due to I basically was med boarded for physical and mental health reasons from my original injuries at my first command.
Yeah, you mentioned in I think in your bio or in some of the things that you've gone through that you definitely had your share of mental health struggles in the military. As I see, so many of us have mental health issues, and so it's good to see that there's people who will at least speak openly about having those struggles, because I believe that they are much more common than people talk about.
Absolutely. And again, it was the early 2000s, and I think some things have changed, but I will say it looks like it's a very slow change. Um, so it was just also not a lot of these things, PTSD, MST, all those were not even discussed until years later. So as you're a military member going through some of that, if you have nowhere to turn, you don't even have an answer to things.
No.
So I think that was one of the most difficult things for me at that time, is feeling very isolated and not knowing what is wrong with me compared to normal injuries. Because it wasn't something that was physically manifesting itself where you can see like somebody has issues with a limb or something. It was completely psychological. So it was definitely very difficult, and you feel like you gave up on your career. Like you feel like you tap out. Like, at what point did the scale tip that I could no longer do my job, or felt like it would be better if I was not in the military anymore? And
Yeah.
that med board result, basically the senior chief at the time said, like, I don't foresee you making it out of here alive if you don't accept this med board.
Yeah.
So I was definitely a full suicide risk at the time, and thankfully they saw that and med boarded me out, even though it sucked at the time. It was a very difficult decision to accept.
Yep. And it's unfortunate because there was such a stigma associated about getting treatment back then too. I mean, I can remember for the longest time, I just pretended that I had never had a nervous breakdown, and I destroyed all my records associated with it. Um, People just didn't go see the therapist, or they didn't go get mental health treatment. It wasn't like a thing that you could even talk about back in those days. And so I think the only difference now is that it's considered to be somewhat destigmatized to go, but I would also say that it's still hard, I think, to even get treatment these days because there just simply aren't enough providers. There isn't enough time in the day with manning and other things for people to feel that they can go, especially on ships where we're so undermanned. So there's still definitely, I think, barriers to seeking care that are similar to what I think you experienced.
Yeah, absolutely. From that aspect, things haven't necessarily changed. I think one of the biggest things that I see consistently is still the fear of your clearance. That was something that was a big fear for me, being from a dual citizen household. My mom is not an American citizen, so my clearance was already fragile at the time. And
Mhm.
the fear of losing the rest of my clearance would have been the end of my career. So not wanting to seek mental health treatment, it's still something I consistently hear to this day as a provider now, that they either go out in town or find other sneaky ways to get help because they have such a fear of self-disclosing at their command.
It's so sad. I've heard the same thing. I think I just got lucky that I got off the TRICARE system and got into TRICARE S.O.S, which is considered private care here in the UK, only because of how far I am from a military treatment facility. And what that did is it even gets me out of the NHS system to where I get the private care, and I got like the top doctor in psychiatry. I got the top EMDR specialist, and it really it changed everything. It just allowed me to see my trauma, it reframed it for me in a way that was so healthy and so needed. And if I hadn't had that type of treatment, I don't know where I would be today. And that is the game changer, is when you get the right treatment and you know the name for the thing that you're going through. You know that if you need medication or you need talk therapy, you get it. And so many people don't get that, and that goes right into what service dogs. They're another treatment that people need, and we've known that the science exists. And so, tell me a little bit about your journey with service dogs. How your career working with them got started.
It honestly got started at Syracuse. I was originally projected to go into a completely different career field, which was library and information science. And then through another student veteran, actually, who was getting a service dog, I kind of learned of the concept. So coming from the military working dog side and a passion for working alongside a dog in that capacity, this new concept of working with a dog for a completely different purpose beyond, seeing eye dogs was enlightening. So I completely changed my degree field and field of study, and completely went into the nerd and bureaucracy side of the service dog world, which is public access law, the inconsistency even in terminology. So it was born in college from a fellow veteran, fell in love with the concept, went to school for it, and then got hired on by what is now the largest service dog provider in the US. So I got to build out their original program. And, just like the military teaches you really well about learning, OJT, I did every job that organization had, which really just reinforced a lot of the knowledge and also different perspectives on what it's like to ask for a service dog, to be an applicant, to be vulnerable and ask for a service animal and have to articulate what your needs are. So having set on all the different perspectives really just continued heightening my passion for the industry.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard because some people just see a dog as a pet, and they don't really understand the uses of service dogs. Um, can you tell us a little bit about the differences between like the working dogs that you work with, and then the dogs that are more service oriented to help humans?
So in the service and therapy dog world, it's probably easiest explained as introvert versus extrovert. So an introvert is a dog that would be a service dog that works for one specific person holding the leash, meaning that dog's job is to do some kind of medical support for the person who's handling that dog. that is a service animal. It is under ADA. As long as it is task trained for that person, it is valid for a medical condition. Therapy dog, that's the extrovert. The person holding the leash is basically donating their time and bringing this trained animal to environments to assist everybody else and make everybody else happy. So that's the dogs you see in schools, in hospitals, retirement homes, special ed classes, things like that. So those are the dogs that are really meant to just do the human animal bond in a support capacity. For people who don't have a full-time service animal. So they don't rely on this dog for one specific medical condition. It's more of a mental health, lower your blood rate, blood pressure, and just release those feel-good hormones kind of situation.
Yeah,
That's the primary difference between the two.
Yep. And it's really interesting too about how therapy dogs have just really become such an asset, even in the military. Like we're seeing therapy dogs on even warships. I think it's the Gerald Ford now has a therapy dog. So that was really groundbreaking when I saw that, and I would like to think that that could be a program for any ship. Like if they go through the qualification process and they find the right handler on the ship who will take ownership and responsibility for the animal. I don't see why that couldn't be something that every warship has.
It is. The ROI for bringing a dog to a command is huge, especially with the astronomical suicide and mental health numbers we're seeing across the branches. It's not a Navy problem. It's a first responder problem, meaning not just the people in uniform that go abroad, but also our stateside first responders. And it's just a lot of the field we work in. But if you imagine, military members also don't have their own pet at home. They're no longer in their home environment. Like there's a lot of things that already basically are working against you. So, basically giving them a win with something as simple as a community engagement or therapy dog can have this huge impact on people also feeling seen. Like getting those 5 minutes with a dog is extremely validating that the command even sees that you guys might need those 5 minutes. You know what I mean? That it's not like, oh, just go back to work filling sandbags. It's like, okay, you guys are of value. We do understand that life is not always cush. And even though you signed up for this, that doesn't mean you're just replaceable.
Right. And Jeff Goro says, we have an emotional support dog. He says his wife is a teacher and it's used for the kiddos in school and wonderful for the kids. That's amazing. And this is something, a therapy dog is something that you can train your dog to do, and then you can go into schools and hospitals, correct?
Yeah, so there's actually a ton of organizations out there that help do certifications specifically for therapy dogs. So it's a parallel line when it comes to training to service dogs, meaning they all need to be very good and docile and of solid temperament in public, meaning you don't want to have a dog that is a danger to society because they're going to communicate with their teeth. So the biggest priority is, can the dog function in a public setting, and is the dog comfortable interacting with other humans? And after that, it's really just basic obedience. They can't steal tennis balls off the bottom of a walker. They shouldn't just be stealing snacks off the ground, because some of those could be medication. So a lot of the rules involving these animals are actually born from safety features, or lessons learned is what we're going to call it. But so, yeah, there's plenty of organizations that will certify your dog, give you the exact criteria for the testing. And then if you work under their umbrella, you actually work under their liability insurance, which is another big thing for therapy dogs, to be licensed somehow or tested somehow, so that there is something covering you in worst case scenario, honestly.
Right. And the organizations that you bring the dogs into. I'm sure
Yes.
Certain hospitals or schools or any kind of a facility will want to work with certain organizations that have that insurance, so that if something does happen, there's protections in place.
Exactly. Specifically when you're working with schools and children, it's just an extra layer of protection for everybody.
Yeah. And who doesn't want a well-trained dog? I mean, I can't even tell you, like, all the work we put into Jayda to get her over here has just continued to pay off in spades. I mean, it's down to where now my husband he has a little clip and he puts it on his belt. and Jayda walks. I mean, she won't go ahead of him. She starts to go just a little ahead of him, and he just backs up and he waits, and then she has to walk around. She has to sit, and then until she does, then he lets her go again. But I mean, who doesn't want a dog that you can't take off leash and that will recall when there's distractions and other things around? I mean, that's you want, just like you want well-behaved children. You should have a well-behaved dog, and this type of treatment and therapy helps to enable that. So, tell me a little bit about what it is that the dogs that you worked with. So, you started off with Leashes of Valor. Was that the first organization you worked with, and what did you do there?
That was the first one I founded myself. And there we focused only on service dogs for post 9/11 veterans. So we had a pretty narrow funnel.
Okay. And then once you started working with them for a little while, and then you wanted to expand sort of what you were doing, and that's how you got involved in the Hero Academy and founded that.
Yeah, so ultimately I saw also the need in the industry changing, and basically wanted to pivot a little bit better on not only the types of dogs I serve, but also the type of end user I serve. And I saw a lot of people falling through the cracks, kind of like how we communicated behind the scenes, where there's no department that was going to help you get your dog to England.
No.
I was getting contacted by families who have a military dependent child who needs a service dog, or people who are first responders who are veterans, but because of the type of career they have, they can't have a full-time service dog, which is where some of this police department therapy dog was born from, is seeing the suicide rate in that community skyrocket, and also figure out how to mend relationships. I mean, we've seen over the last few years, the relationship among the community and first responders is strained, to put it politely.
Right.
So just finding a way to mend fences, but also address a mental health crisis. And I really just wanted to start a program that just had a different, broader mission statement and not have people fall through the cracks anymore. So I joined under Hero Labradors and created the Hero Academy training program. And that allows us to do service dogs for any era veteran, as well as first responders who directly need a service dog. And then we also open it up to these community engagement / therapy dogs that work for a specific department internally in the wellness program. So as a mental health resource for the officers or firefighters or EMTs, as well as externally. So we see a lot of these community engagement dogs being used in schools with children. And it's really just changing relationship for how the person wearing the uniform feels when you're being approached by kids with excitement, telling their parents, I met this officer and this dog, and they love seeing them. And it used to not be like that. And you don't want kids growing up not wanting to engage with law enforcement. So it's really just changed how people in the community interact with each other.
That's powerful.
And has demilitarized, there's a lot of animosity toward law enforcement looking much more like the military, and that is uncomfortable stateside. So having a sweet-tempered dog that is really just there for positive energy and make people feel better is also demilitarized and softened the rough edges of the look that currently is receiving so much animosity.
Yeah, I mean, why not have a police therapy dog at every station with a handler that can go to schools, can go to community events, and interact? I mean, as you're talking, I'm thinking, man, how nice would it have been if I'd gone to my therapist office and there'd been a therapy dog as you're sitting on the couch talking to your therapist, and you get into these really vulnerable and tough moments. I mean, my God, like that would have been an amazing addition to the treatment for the people that want that. I know not everybody wants a dog in there, but definitely. And Brian here, he says he actually does the lights for police cars in Washington State, or does all their security electronic equipment. And he says he works with a lot of handlers and officers, and they feel support from their canine as well as the citizens. So yeah, it's true. Like a lot of the people that have the military working dogs, they're definitely getting a therapeutic benefit from those animals as well. Am I right?
Absolutely. I mean, not all dogs that are law enforcement working dogs are necessarily user friendly, where a lot of people get to meet them. but they still always bring a feel-good vibe. Like it's a very universal love. There's not a lot of people that really have a strong aversion to dogs, even though I will have to say in the same thought, there is a lot of cultural differences. Not all cultures that live in this country are very familiar with dogs being as domesticated or part of our lifestyle as that they're familiar with in their own home country.
Sure.
And there were also law enforcement dogs grossly misused during the riots in the 60s and 70s. So there's communities that are not allowed to have working dogs in their community because of the past. So it's really also trying to find progress, trying to find a way forward and move past old things. So some of our dogs work in a department that hasn't had canines since the 70s.
Gosh, that's something I never thought about, was the fact that dogs were used to scare people and to terrorize them in certain settings. And I know that even in some countries, dogs are considered dirty. They're just associated with being street dogs. They're not looked at or utilized for the same kinds of things that we, and many of us in many cultures, utilize them for. But I do find universally worldwide people love dogs. I mean, wherever I seem to go in my many travels in the Navy, I find dog lovers. So that's encouraging. And Stacy Rush, she says here, she says, I am a service member and also a licensed mental health counselor outside of the military. With the lack of providers for service members and the low therapy reimbursement rate from TRICARE that isn't helping recruit more providers, I could see a huge impact for therapy dogs to serve in that gap. Thank you for the live feed. And yeah, what is your thoughts on some of the ways in which the military specifically could use therapy dogs more?
I think they get in their own way. They've been offered therapy dogs from a lot of different organizations over the last few years. I've actually tried it myself when they had that increase in suicides on one of the carriers in Virginia Beach. And the bureaucracy held us up. 2 months later, we still hadn't visited with dogs. So I think it's a great tool. I love the innovators and leadership that have the courage to actually say, you know what, we're going to bring our dog on our ship and we're going to take it with us out for sea trials. Like, that is brilliant, courageous leadership to say we're going to try something different, because that doesn't affect their clearance. It's not a mental health drug that makes you worry about their readiness. Like, it is honestly the least invasive form of treatment with the biggest return on investment when it comes to an entire ship enjoying having a mascot dog. So I really think it's an underutilized asset that they could really provide a lot more often. There's certain rates that become dog handlers, like religious program specialists back in the day.
They're perfect
at the forefront, and they have access to almost every command, because the chaplain usually has access to every command. You can travel around with a Labrador that's certified as a therapy dog and have such a huge impact. So it's a tool that's available to them if they overcome their own bureaucracy to start utilizing it more, because the outside community is definitely willing and ready to support the military on this endeavor. I've seen it at plenty of different duty stations and abroad. So it's hopefully something from our conversation to some leadership's ears, right?
I hope so. I don't know how many senior leaders listen to my podcast. I hope all of them do, but I would like to think that, we're making change, one conversation at a time. And speaking of which, can you tell us a little bit about the science of therapy dogs and what's been in the literature because I know you have a very academic and policy standpoint as well. And what have you discovered?
It's we've seen a lot of where it's difficult to put your finger on it, if that makes sense. Like, of course, there is the, your heart rate is lowered, your depression. We've seen a large majority of people long-term get off their psych meds. It is probably much more of a long-term study than the government's willing to currently pay for, is what we've seen. The suicide rate is much lower, but it still exists even with people with service dogs. I've unfortunately seen it as well. So it's not it's not 100% score, if that makes sense. But
Right.
I can tell you a story where I had a graduate many years ago, many organizations ago, who went in the garage and went to the gun cabinet and got a gun out, and his dog started biting his pants until he stopped. And he was absolutely going to shoot himself that day. So I have like dozens of
I have a story like that too. You made me think of a
dozens of
guy that my
stories.
husband used to live with who had the same exact story where he was going to off himself one day, and he said all he had to do was look at his dog and he just couldn't do it.
And that's honestly more scientific than any of the numbers. There's so many stories where either the decision to I'm not going to leave my dog behind basically prevented them from getting to that escalation, or the dog literally intervened knowing they were not in a good place. And usually we've seen with suicide that the decision-making process is very fast, meaning you could be in like the ideation phase for years, and it just takes one little thing on the Tetris board to get you to that really bad place. So it's not always a slow boil. And having these dogs literally intervene and know your person that well, it's fascinating. It's incredible.
It is. It is. It's crazy what an animal can. As I'm looking down at Jayda, who's laying right here, it's amazing what a animal can sense. I mean, right down to like the time of day that they eat, and I mean, just little things like that. Like 15 minutes past when she's supposed to be fed, she's tapping at her bell that's by her food, and it's like, how does she even know what time it is? I mean, and they get so accustomed to us and our schedules, and they follow what we do, and they're just such amazing companions for people. I really can't say enough good things about it. And then, like you say, the service dogs, or the working dogs, and the functions that they perform are so vital and important. What is it that you would advise somebody if they wanted to start working with dogs as a career? I mean, this is an interesting industry in that it's not necessarily regulated in the same way that, let's say, a doctor's regulated or a lawyer, but it's just as dangerous, because if you don't know what you're doing when you're working with a dog, you're gonna screw up that dog. You're gonna maybe get yourself hurt. So, what would you advise somebody who might be thinking about making this a career?
I mean, you usually don't enter this career to become wealthy, for starters. You also want a thick skin. I mean, you are working with dogs. As fun as that sounds, there's also a lot of dirty work involved with it. There's a lot of continuing education. And specifically when it comes to service dogs, there's the mental health side of things, and it can absolutely be a heartbreaking industry. It's very difficult to tell people that they may not be the right candidate for a service dog, period, and they are literally hanging all of the hats in that basket. Like, that is so difficult to tell people that I cannot help you, basically. You will learn to turn people away. You have people who are not in a place to receive a service animal. Again, you work in the mental health field. So peeling the onion, finding the reason why they need the dog, training a dog to that, it's definitely been heartbreaking over the years too. It can be very interesting. There's a lot of continuing education, even though it is, like you said, the Wild West. Because except for the Department of Justice, there's not a lot of government oversight, and there's a lot of accrediting agencies you can find on the internet, including getting an ID card on Amazon. So it's there's a lot of fraud out there, and that should also be a warning sign for people trying to get a service dog. Is really looking into, where are you getting a service animal? What did that person study to or produce in previous trainings? You know, like what kind of service dog are they going to produce for you, especially if you're paying for that yourself, because you know what it can cost.
Right.
So, and finding the right organization that's not going to hose you over. So there's ways for people to learn OJT. You don't need a degree in service dog work or psychology to become a service dog trainer. Ultimately, you just need to be able to train a very good product. And if you're not going to go out on your own, work for an organization that has all the proper accreditations and processes in place for you to produce quality service dogs.
Right. And just like people who don't necessarily grow up in the most healthy environments, if a dog isn't raised in a healthy environment and you're trying to train a dog later on down the road, um, it's going to be more challenging. And people that want to self-train, I think they have to understand too, what is really involved in the consistency. I mean, like I say, to when my husband started the training with Jayda, he was going. He literally went to Home Depot or Lowe's or some sort of a hardware store every single night for about 8 months, and we would just walk aisles, and he would just say, "Yep, it's time for my walk," and it was very consistent, and because he knew, like, she has a lot of anxiety and reactiveness, and he knew that that would not be acceptable as a service dog. You can't have a dog that's terrified of people and sounds and noises and other things, because they have to be out in public and they have to be confident. And I think that's another thing too that people don't understand. They're like, "Oh, I want to make my dog my service dog." It's like, well, do you have a dog that can be a service dog?
That is we call that not all kids go to college. And that means not everybody's dog is going to be able to be a service dog. There's dogs that have a difficulty on certain flooring. They have depth perception issues where they can't be walking on the second floor in a mall with the glass barriers. There's all kinds of strange things that would prevent a dog from safely working in a public setting around other people. And really, what you don't want is a dog that's going to be reactive to the point that they bite somebody else. So the reality is that not every dog can be a service dog. And it absolutely, like you said, takes so much consistent training and exposure to even try and achieve that, which for people with mental health struggles themselves, not everybody's even in a place to do that kind of consistent training out in public, depending on where you're at mentally yourself.
That's a
So
great
it's very
point.
difficult for everybody to even achieve this on your own. Like that's why some organizations exist, because it's hard to do this alone.
Right, right. And having that um, guidance and the ability to work with another organization that's helping them. But I think another concern is the idea that, okay, you get the service dog for PTSD or for mental health reasons. Have you ever seen it where the owner then is not consistent with the training and all the things that was put into this dog for it to be the way it was? And then how do you, because I can tell you, even with Jayda, you know, she's not the same dog. I mean, she's still so much better than she was when we got her, but she's now gone back to, if we take her into a restaurant or we take her in tight spaces, because she's used to going on walks and having all this room, she's now not sensitized anymore. She became desensitized because of our constant exposure, but she sort of reverted back to, we'd have to constantly expose her once again for her to be okay in those public settings. So how do you handle that once you've given the dog over to someone and they don't stick with the training?
Some of that depends on the type of contract we have with the person or department regarding the dog. So if it's a police department, it's not going to be easy for me to walk on in there and be like, "You're giving me my dog back." Not saying I wouldn't. So it really depends on if they are taught how to do the maintenance training. And for therapy dogs that certify with departments, they usually go through one of the police certifying agencies for the therapy dog category. So there's usually an annual recertification for certain behavior. So that kind of keeps everybody accountable within a certain window.
Yeah, that's good.
That doesn't mean we haven't learned lessons over the last somewhat decade in this industry on what can happen. There's some funny stories where, like, we, for example, teach you not to break your dog, like not let your dog go potty while they're wearing a vest. And there's a very specific reason for that. They don't need to start thinking that they can start peeing under vest. Sure enough, we've had dogs, people start slacking off, letting them break under vest, and they actually marked something in a department store. You are financially responsible for whatever your dog damaged, because that is not part of their job, nor is that behavior acceptable. So they kind of had their own consequences. I mean, there's more severe ones, and we've changed our ownership agreements with the people that get a service dog from us. where they have to recertify annually, and they have to send health records every 6 months when they go to the veterinarian. And that's basically like a health and comfort check for the dog too. We've had some horrible stories where somebody went the other direction and did not progress in their health, but actually went backward, started substance abusing, and we barely caught it in time and had to repossess the dog out of what turned out to be an abusive and dangerous situation for the animal. So, and that was worst case scenario. And in that situation, we actually retired the dog for his own sake and just let him live out the rest of his life in spoiled glory.
As a pet.
But you know, if you don't maintain certain behavior, if you feed a dog in the kitchen, they're going to start begging for food in the kitchen. So during the handler training for a therapy dog or a service dog, we cover all of the different things to maintain the level of training that we have instilled on the dog. And then ideally they live up to those standards of behavior so that the dog does not regress. Sometimes the little things, like when you have toddlers at home, the dog's going to learn what Cheetos taste like eventually. It's going to happen.
Right, little things.
There's the little things that are fixable. So we stay with our handlers for life. So we always help them when the training issues come up. And if it's not something blatant that they cause themselves, that is a detriment to the dog's health or future career, we're always there to iron things back out.
And I can attest to that, Danique, having texted you many, many times over that course of whatever it was, the 6 to 8 months leading up to getting her here to England. You were such a calm and steady presence about how I could navigate the nightmare of what it took to get her here, and if it was even possible to do it this way. There were many times I thought that, as you remember, that I just did not think this was going to pan out the way that it did. So
you put in a lot of, you and your husband put in a tremendous amount of work, and that is why it played out the way it did. Like, yes, you asked all the right questions and you got yourself all the right answers from people and built your network to get you there. But in the end, it was you and him who put consistent work into that dog that made that happen.
Yeah. And, you know, we're so thankful and blessed because now we have a wonderful animal. I mean, like everything, it was such a win-win. I mean, we have an animal that helps my husband. We have an animal who goes places with us where we can enjoy her. And, I mean, she gets bored at places now and they love taking her. Like she's like the ideal boarding client because she's great with other dogs. She sits, she listens. She's not allowed on furniture. So she has no bad habits that anyone is, in fact, people that don't even like dogs, like my husband's mother, has never liked dogs, not a dog person at all. Now loves Jayda. And always asks about Jayda, wants us to put Jayda on the phone. It's amazing to see. I'm sure you have stories like that of the people that you've helped and things like that too, haven't you?
It's real. My favorite is the kids or the dog grandparents that I then gain, like the parents of the veteran that graduated, service dog grandchild, or the children's drawings of and their new perception of their parent with a service dog and how that changed their entire family dynamic. Those are the cute ones. Those are the powerful ones for me.
Yeah, it's such a reward. It can be, like you said, a very frustrating line of work, but like it reminds me of like social work. Very, very hard, very compassion fatigue, I'm sure, sets in. But at the same time, when you do get those amazing stories of when it works out and when the help that you provided, you know, led to the outcome that could happen, that must be some of the best parts of your work. If somebody wants a service dog or a therapy animal is something you train for, but if somebody wants a service dog and they see all these organizations and they like you said, that you ask questions, what else can people do?
Ask within your own network if you know people that have service animals where they went. Honestly, the veterans community is thankfully pretty cutthroat about, you know, this worked out or this didn't work out. So your own network is probably one of your better resources. even though it goes against my better judgment, a good collection of organizations is on Assistance Dogs International. And while I don't necessarily believe that that is a good certifying agency, even though certifying is a loose term, they have a decently comprehensive list divided out by the type of service dog you need, meaning if it's diabetes related, mobility related, peanut allergy, PTSD, what you name it, they have everything divvied out pretty well. And yeah, I mean, it's difficult. It's a dangerous game. I would really go by a referral basis. If you know somebody else who got a dog there, that's really your best source of, do they actually produce quality? There's no other way online with a lot of organizations to tell when it comes to even their accounting or the quality of their product. Can look really cute on Instagram. That doesn't mean that they're actually going to help you. And in the end, this is a prescription.
Yeah.
And it's, are you buying that prescription on the borderlands or are you buying it at a pharmacy? You know, so you really want to be careful what you're getting and where you're getting it.
Do you think that dog training should be regulated? I mean, do you think it would help with any of the issues that we see with like why breed bans end up happening or things like that? Do you think that's something that the government should step in and try to regulate?
I think it should be looked at in the category of like a driver's license. It doesn't matter if grandma or high school taught me how to drive, as long as we can all in the end pass a certain standard of behavior or skill. So I don't think it should be regulated where the dog is trained, or by whom. I think that would be too much oversight, but I think there needs to be a minimum threshold of behavior and expectations in order to prevent a lot more injury and fraud. I mean, there's organizations that will charge families $30,000 and put zero training on a dog. And there's no better business bureau to call afterward to get what is done is done. It is simple property law because it's dogs. So
yeah, it makes you wonder if like the
snake oil as a mental health treatment, and you're saying it's a prescription, there should be a certain threshold of skill or quality that needs to be achieved.
I mean, but you think about it, like even somebody who cuts your hair, they have to get certified through the state, right? There's a licensing agency who licenses people who cut our hair. Why couldn't in each state there be a licensing agency for dog trainers where if you, or a service dog, I mean, I'm saying service dog, whatever, any kind of a trainer of your animal. And then what they could say is that you need to show that your dog has been to do certain things where, I don't know what those things would be, to have a therapy dog or whatever. You could say your dog needs to be certified through a trainer that has this licensing. You know what I mean? Like it does seem like it could go there one day, maybe state by state. I don't know. I'm thinking outside. I mean, I don't know.
I'll tell you, this is what we ran into with the Department of Transportation hearings for the Air Carrier Act. It's the disability rights groups. And it's the disability rights groups that want to protect the right of a disabled person to train their own service animal. So then if you're owner trained like you were, what are you first going to get a professional license in order to train Jayda? Or should it just matter what the end? So it's, look at it this way. You go to the DMV to do your driver's test. Everybody has to show up.
That's what I mean. Like I would have done the test because you remember, Danique, I went to
I'm saying they should be testing the dog, not the trainer.
They should be testing the dog, not the trainer. Yeah, I agree.
How you got there, if you train it yourself or if you paid a professional to do it, does the dog pass, or is the dog up to snuff to work in public, to be in an airplane 30,000 feet in the air in a metal tube when the air pressure changes? You know, like that's a volatile situation. If you can't handle your dog and he's never flown before and he's not really a service dog, things could go really bad. And if you ask the airlines on how many union lawsuits they have for flight attendants that have been bit by false service dogs, it is absolutely understandable why they, for example, want a certain behavior threshold for their own safety.
Yeah, you would think that that's something that the Department of Transportation could enforce, is a test. You would think that that would be like a behavior test, like just like what I had done at Petco. I mean, she was pretty thorough on that test. I mean, you couldn't, if Jayda wasn't a well-behaved dog, she would not have passed that test.
But then it's Petco is private. So that's where we're seeing a lot of these like ADI come in and say, we'll do a test, or we will test your organization, and to be a member, it's $5,000. But then they don't actually test the quality of the animal or the actual quality of the training.
Right.
And DOT or the airlines are like, well, we're not going to pay to test all these dogs to fly with us. So then it's this public-private partnership issue on whose responsibility is this going to be? Like, nobody wants to own it.
Nobody
Everybody
wants to own it.
change, but nobody wants to own it.
But if the DOT took it on, it would be such a game changer for people. I mean, the airlines would be seen as the saviors in the, in the dog industry. Like, I mean, not just the dog, I mean, the traveling industry. I mean, I think ultimately one day it would pay off. Maybe it wouldn't pay off right away, but I think, and you would have animals that could travel safely, and not like Jayda, where it's like, oh, I either risk putting her in cargo, which granted, chances are nothing would happen. I mean, many dogs travel in cargo, but there are dogs that die, especially snub-nosed dogs, in cargo. And so we don't feel comfortable putting her in an unsafe. We don't feel comfortable risking that, to fly her overseas. And but we are a people of means that can do certain things that a lot of families can't, and we know that. So it's still a very unsolved issue when it comes to pets. Pets and travel. So I do hope that as time goes on, we find ways to work together to make that happen. But wow, we've just covered so much ground. Is there anything else that I haven't covered that you wanted to talk about?
God, I think we've run the gauntlet of things.
Yeah, I think so too. It's been such a pleasure. I definitely want to let people know where they can find you. I will put your website right here. It is theheroacademy.org. And tell me a little bit about some of the ways that your organization works with these dogs.
So we take dogs that wash out from other programs and basically recareer them to either become service dogs or therapy dogs working at departments. And we have most of the dogs for about 2 years. And then we gift them to departments that otherwise couldn't afford to have a therapy dog, or we give them to military families who are in need of a service animal. Most of our dogs cost on average about $25,000 to produce, and we're completely volunteer run and donor funded. So we don't have any government oversight, and we don't pay anybody any salaries. So we all donate our time to this effort.
Wow, that's amazing. And where are you located out of? Just out of curiosity.
So we're by Fort Walker, which used to be Fort A.P. Hill, right by the Richmond-Fredericksburg on 95 in Virginia. But we take and place dogs all over the country.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. All right, Danique, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the Stories of Service podcast. I'm sure we will keep in touch as we always do. If you ever need anything from me, I'm always happy to help. And I thank you so much for what you do. Just stick around for a couple seconds. I want to say goodbye backstage, and I'll go to full screen. But thank you so much for coming on. And gosh, it's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Same here. It was such a joy to talk to you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. And this week, I have a lot of different podcasts and shows. I'm on a webinar tomorrow for the Government Communicators Organization that my friend Mitch runs to talk naval career stuff. And then Saturday, I get to talk to the Sultan of Slowjamistan. Very excited about that. I've only had one comment on my show, but nothing beyond that. So I think this will be exciting to dive into the nation's newest micronation that I'm a proud citizen of. So can't wait to go on. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will talk to you later. Have a great night now. Bye-bye.